Okay, so this is like the Phara problem, and Phara has a 57% win rate at the moment. Overwatch University has shitloads of posts that are basically Phara's ruining my video game. When I talk about Phara and when I talk about like Bastion and stuff like that, I always come back to cheese. And what is healthy as cheese and what is non-healthy as cheese. I always come back to StarCraft, Six Pool, Zergling Rush. Very simple cheeses, and quite frankly, the whole RTS genre is entirely dependent upon cheeses to set the playing field. Really, the discussion is about what is good cheese and what is bad cheese. Cheese is a strategy which requires a low skill input that has a potential high reward, or it requires a disproportionate amount of skill to defend against. Basically, it's a gambit at winning the game by exploiting a weakness in the system's design to basically get one up on somebody that might be a higher skill than you. That's what cheese is. So why is Phara cheese? And like, what is cheese in general? Well, cheese in StarCraft is healthy. If you have a threat of an early rush, it stops the enemy team from fully investing into your economy, because every piece of minerals you spend on a probe isn't an investment you put on putting a wall up in your base or putting defensive units or that side of stuff. It's basically a stopper on how greedy you can be in the game, which is really important, because if everyone's able to be as greedy as humanly possible, then the optimal strategy is always the same, because it's a greedy strategy. It's a strategy of investing everything into your economy so you can keep getting better over time. So why is Phara cheese? And Phara is cheese simply for the reason that Phara exploits a weakness in the enemy team's composition that essentially means that you win by default or for a certain amount of time until they correct that weakness in the composition. So the weakness in the composition is obvious, like its lack of hit scan, lack of ability to deal with you. And that's kind of like the first major problem with Phara. One major strength of Phara that has to be there is that she exploits the vulnerabilities in the other team's comps. She essentially is uninteractable for about half of the enemies on the other team. And that just is bad, right? That's just bad. Nobody enjoys not being able to interact with something. Nobody enjoys Orisa, nobody enjoys Roadhog. Every single character that stops interactions is kind of like a problematic area of the game. And Phara is a character that can exploit certain weaknesses in the enemy team's comp. And the biggest way to show this is if you are on a payload map or a hybrid map and you're on defense, you have to pick some sort of hit scan, some sort of, not necessarily hit scan, obviously. As I say, Echo is the best counter to Phara at the moment. You have to pick something that can deal with Phara. And if you're in a random game and people randomly decide not to pick the thing that can deal with Phara, you got a fucking problem. You got a real problem, because you're gonna have to swap to counter it. And if you swap to counter it, you're gonna end up pretty much on your own against a Phara with no support. And as we know, Phara is a pocketed character that requires more than one person in order to deal with it. It's just a very unhealthy space to design him. And I think everyone kind of understands that. I think everyone gets that. It's difficult because it's uninteractive. And the only way you can fix this uninteractability is to make it so essentially Phara can't fly for as often, or Phara can only fly for periods. But even then, you still have to be able to interact with her when she's flying, because she gets that default off angle from the rest of your team. And really bad Phara players always end up playing from off angles regardless, because that is the correct way to play. Shooting up is hard as a problem, and that's untenable. You can't fix that. And then there's the other problem. The other problem is that when Mercy pockets a hit scan, why is Mercy pocketing a hit scan good? Breakpoints? Yeah, breakpoints. But Mercy, regardless of the breakpoints, is able to keep somebody in an angle for a longer period of time despite poking pressure on them. Soft poking pressure can never get somebody out of an angle because Mercy will always be on them. That's why pocketing in particular is good. The damage boost is really good, 100% really good. The real power is the ability to just stand wherever the fuck you want. That's the really good stuff. And that's why Smurfs can abuse pocketing so much, because angle control and being able to stand where you want is like the most important thing in Overwatch. So it's a difficult one, because how do you stop a Mercy pocket? You stop it through, essentially, you either get sharp enough pressure that the hit scan isn't able to constantly repeat the angle, or the alternate is you throw something at it, right? You get into melee range with it. You either ignore it, or you throw something at it, or you get something so sharp that it can't peek. That's like the three options you have. So yeah, the correct option against Phara is running at the end the rest of the enemy team. And you know why that is? You can't throw something at the Phara. The Phara's angle is completely devoid of any melee range. So you end up with the two things of like the hit scan swaps, and you end up with, hey, well, you can't do anything about it, so you may as well run at my team. And it ends up in a trade. And nobody really likes ending up in a trade by default. It's just kind of like a boring, awful playstyle. Why would we make a character good that forces the enemy team to play like goats and just run us down? It's like really, really bad for the game. So like Phara has always been the worst of Overwatch, and Blizzard Blizzard has, for the entire history of the game, kept Phara in check. Just completely kept Phara in check. She has never been OP. She has never been really good. And I don't know if this is just incompetence in balancing or just like random like brownie emotion. Maybe it just hasn't happened. But I feel like this was on purpose for Overwatch 1, because Blizzard realized that essentially an area where Phara was good and where that cheese was able to thrive was probably a poor area to be designing into. But then we end up in Overwatch 2 and we have no off tank and we have no ability to shut down spam and stuff like that. And the Phara is essentially able to just do whatever she wants because there is no way of shutting it down. There's no turn off. In Overwatch 1, Phara was a lot more spammy. She had a lot more AoE, and that was on purpose because if you have spam and you have AoE, you can shout chokes, and that was like one of the design elements Blizzard was designing towards. But now that they've sped up the projectiles, they've reduced the splash, it's a dueling character, and it's a dueling character on angles, and nobody's going to be able to counter it properly in ranked still, because you still have to swap to an extra character in order to be able to do anything about it. And Jesus Christ, this is awful. Junk is way worse than Phara. In no way is Junk worse than Phara, because Junk isn't playable. And that's the point. Phara shouldn't be good in any state of the game right now, because there is no off tank to keep them in check. There is no extra person to lock out the resources from the spam and stop them being able to basically beat you down. So that's essentially where I'm at with Phara. Phara is really bad for the game as a design point of view, because Phara is cheese, and the answer to Phara is essentially to put more resources into the barrel or run it down, which are both awful styles of the game. Everyone hates Phara at the moment. They absolutely despise them. And then we have this additional problem, right? We have the additional problem of Mercy. Now, Mercy stacked on top of the Phara problem because, and I've watched this video earlier, which I referenced before, which is this. Why Mercy is fundamentally flawed and Blizzard can't buff her. It's essentially an argument that pocket characters are problematic in general, and that Mercy is a specific example of a pocketing character that is bad because of mobility creep. And I kind of disagree in a broad sense with this video. There's kind of like 3 different varieties of skill you can have in a video game. You can have positioning skill, you can have mechanical skill. Sorry, 1 second. I've got to rescue Peggy. She's making noise. Give me 10 seconds. I'll be back. Yeah, so you have these 3 different types of skill you can have. You can have timing, positioning, and aiming, essentially, on mechanics. Mercy has no real timing, like, lever to pull, because the timing is entirely dependent on the DPS she's with at the time. Because Mercy has, like, slow, reliable healing, it's always going to be better used on DPS. The positioning and the movement and that sort of stuff. Before Mercy had like the slow strafing off of the Guardian Angel, the movement for the Guardian Angel essentially allowed you to just like glide around. There was no instant ping and stuff like that. And you had to learn the Superjump. So essentially the positioning skill was like a lot higher, and the mechanical skill scaled with your ability to be able to do those things. So not only did you have a planning skill, but you also had an execution skill and being able to play Mercy properly. So we went from having no timing skill and having positioning and mechanical skill that scales with your SR, and nobody talks about this, and I don't know why they don't talk about this. But the changes to Mercy for Overwatch 2 that made it so you can instantly ping in an opposite direction, so you can basically have a momentum boost from that way to that way straight away the moment you press the button, saying the timing skill is less, not that it does not exist. Yes, I mean, obviously Mercy has a lot of scaling on whether you're doing something at the right time. But I think for the most part, it's like 10 or 15% extra that you get on the base skill. Like if you're damage boosting or you're healing, but you're on the same target, does it really matter that much? I mean, yes, it kind of matters a little bit, but it's like maybe a 15-20% gain. And it doesn't, it's kind of one of those skills that you learn around gold and you keep exactly the same up into GM. It scales a little bit, but it's not that much. It's kind of like you're already 90% there by the time you're in gold. The skill to value curve goes up like that, and then it just peters off really slowly. Like it goes up really fast at the start and there's not that much to gain. And then you have the positioning skill. Right before, you Guardian Angel, you press the spacebar and you glide around. What's your favorite Mercy streamer, guys? So the previous skill, everyone knows it. You had to crouch before Guardian Angeling in order to activate the super jump. And essentially what you could do is you'd glide and then you'd have a little dip at, like if you crouch at the right time. And on this dip, essentially you could activate it here in order to go straight up. You could activate it here or here. And you had like a full range of motion that you could go through for like what direction you could super jump to. You could go straight up and back. You could go straight forward. You could actually super jump at an angle, so you could go up to about 30 degrees left and right. There was a bit of control there. So this is commentated. Let's go to here. So you see that? We Guardian Angel, we cancelled Guardian Angel, and we gradually went to the ground. We go to the next one. Guardian Angel. Do you see that cancel of Guardian Angel? It was cancelled around like there, and then they glided this way in order to get less fire. Guardian Angel? So you have a couple of options. So essentially we Guardian Angel to the Widow there. You could cancel Guardian Angel there and glide up to the top. You could cancel Guardian Angel at the Widow and go over. You could actually like stop yourself up there. You had a full range of motion off of this. And then the opposite, instead of Guardian Angel on Superjump, you had the whole crouch shift, which has just been replaced by the Superjump meter. And then you have the Guardian Angel, and I press spacebar and I go in a different direction. Like, you just look at all of this skill that's been taken out of the kit and basically put in the skill floor. And now it's at a point where just Gold Mercy players can just do this at a whim. The most easy thing to do ever. You've extracted all of the skill ceiling from the game and put it into the skill floor. So the skill floor is now a lot lower and the skill ceiling is a lot lower as well. So where's the skill in Mercy? Why is Mercy an unhealthy character now when she wasn't before? Because the whole idea of pocket characters is you essentially have the risk of being able to kill them, right? That's the point. You don't normally kill the person they're pocketing, you kill the support in and of themselves. And the power of Mercy was that we had this really complex movement system that allowed a smooth scaling. And all of these Mercy content creators never mention it. They never mention that we can no longer buff Mercy because at the skill floor, Mercy is really OP. And if we give her 5 more healing per second, she'd be great at healing tanks and really survivable because anyone and their mum can do that. About fixing Mercy's hitbox during Valk, but the thing is, the Valk wasn't that much of a problem before because essentially the Valk allowed you to go in, but you couldn't do this with Valk, right? You couldn't have a literal 180 momentum swap. You couldn't go like and just make it so you could go wherever the hell you want with Valk. You can't jump there and go back behind there. That's the trouble with Valk. It's not that the hitbox is broken. The hitbox is fine. It's that Mercy is unclickable because nobody can track this at a low rank, and it's trivially easy to do. I miss Superjump. That's the reason why you didn't fall asleep on Mercy, quite frankly. And I don't know why the Mercy mains don't talk about this. That I didn't fall asleep on Mercy because I had to actually hit the control and shift buttons at the right time. And you still actually do the hop if you see that there. They didn't actually remove the hop if I control shift at the same time. This was how you used to do it, control shift, and then you do a little hop at the end. You could control that hop to go in different directions. But like all of that skill taken out of it, it just compounds onto the Phara problem, where Mercy's uninteractable because at a gold level, you can't click her in any way, shape, or form because you have that much control over her movement at a skill floor. And then Phara is just uninteractable. And we have this like hilarious like confluence of events where every single part of these characters' kit have been made more and more unhealthy over time. I don't know how to fix this. I think you'd have to revert it. So yeah, I don't know how to fix this. And Mercy's a problem, and Phara's a problem because for some reason they decided that you should be able to do this at literally 0 skill. They put it as an ability when before it was jank in the kit that was interesting, creative, and fun, and now it's just there. The whole point of the character was that the depth of the kit was learning the movement, and now it's gone. I don't know. I don't know how to fix this. I don't think there's a way to, unless you actually revert it and take the super jump away. But it's just amazing that the simple quality of life change can completely dumpster a character, right? It's amazing that a simple quality of life change can do that much. But yeah, essentially Mercy is really good simply because she's backpacking off Phara, and all the problems with Mercy are coming to the head in terms of like actually being able to pin her down. And she's now a 0 skill, and that was always the meme, right? That was always the meme with Mercy. Mercy takes no skill. Mercy AFKs looking at people. But there was always that truth behind the scenes that everyone kind of knew, that to actually do the movement on Mercy optimally was actually difficult because the super jump could be controlled to quite a fine degree as to where you want to go, and the Guardian Angel had to be used at the right time, and when you Guardian Angel towards something, it was commitment to go there. Now you can Guardian Angel and instant correct 90 degrees, and there's no like downside to using it badly. I think Mercy's in the worst state she's ever been simply because of those changes. And everyone talks about the pocketing problem, everyone talks about every other problem, but people never talk about that. They need to give her more things to do that require risks. I don't think they do. I think the character worked fine. I don't think the character was entirely healthy. Personally, I think Res is a problematic ability and probably should have been replaced by something that can be used aggressively. That's my assumption. I think something like Nade Lamp, Suzu, that type of stuff on Mercy to enable her to essentially allow even like a bubble, Zarya bubble type thing that can be used on a Reinhardt or something like that would be good. But then that allows, the trouble with putting aggressive tools, aggressive bursty tools onto a character is that they like, it's very hard to make an aggressive bursty tool that can't be used as a defensive bursty tool. And then you end up with an angular supporting character that has a defensive burst, and that's like problematic. So that's why the angular supporting characters, for the most part, don't have defensive burst like Brig. That's why Brig caused so many issues. In order for Brig to be balanced, you needed to have a load of stuff taken out of a few of her abilities. But then, talking about Brig balance is just opening a box and you never end up out of the box. I don't think the pocket style of play of Mercy, I don't think that's a problem for the most part. I don't think it's problematic. I think they've made it so that Mercy is essentially requires no skill to learn. Give her an incentive to not pocket but start flying around to triage. People did come up with the idea of giving her like healing that drops off over time. I do think all of Mercy's problem, and the worst part of discussing this is people don't get it, because Mercy's power has not actually been crept by the fact that she has a better movement now, because you can do the same things with the movement. If you were really good with the previous movement, you have the same movement available to you. And so all the really high level Mercy mains were like, it's more or less the same, but they didn't realize the skill distribution that went into it and the amount of time they spent to learn the harder movement system. What if GA empowered your beams, or being in the air empowers their beams? I don't know. I'm always of the opinion I'm on that you try and keep characters as true to their original gameplay as possible. If you can make a character work in the way it's been working for years, you probably should just do that. What was Scarcity in Season 1? Holy fuck, she never was touching the ground as Mercy. It was so OP that she was in the air 24/7. It just makes no sense. Delete Res and give her a 4-shot bazooka cloudy buff for process. Or if we give Mercy a grenade. But that's the thing, like, the only upwards movement on Mercy you used to have was perfecting the super jump before you had to do this and get it that perfect, and now you just go up.